Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Annmarie Hylton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people and the planet. For November, we're focused on saving the nonprofit world. Many nonprofits have lost federal funding this year due to various cuts and disruptions, impacting their ability to operate programs and serve communities. Between January and June 2025, about one-third of nonprofits experienced some form of government funding disruption, such as funding losses, delays, freezes, or stop work orders. This has led to program suspensions, staff reductions, and increased financial instability for many organizations across different sectors. Approximately one-third of nonprofits reported experiencing at least one type of government funding disruption. 21% reported a loss of some government funding, 27% experienced a delay, pause, or freeze in funding, and 6% received stop work orders that halted programs entirely. This led to a shockwave of disbelief in the nonprofit space. So in the spirit of creating a rebound for nonprofits, we decided to have a specialist on our show during the most important quarter of the year for nonprofits instead of our usual Giving Tuesday campaign. Katherine Lacefield is a trusted partner in the philanthropic space with over 20 years of experience empowering organizations and individuals to bring about positive impact in their communities. Her knowledge and expertise span many areas, from overall fundraising strategy, monthly donations, major donation campaigns, and peer-to-peer, to a nuanced understanding of the global grant-making landscape, animal welfare, rights, and sustainable development. Katherine is the founder and head consultant of Just Because Consulting, bringing a wealth of insight to the table through her clients, volunteers, webinars, speaking gigs, articles, and podcasts. The Just Because podcast, Katherine has helped hundreds of nonprofits get excited about fundraising again. She has supported many nonprofits in establishing sustainable funding plans from small group grassroots advocacy groups to large international organizations. Let's get into the interview. With an academic background in environmental development and nonprofit management, Katherine Lacefield has deepened her understanding of the intricate connections between the many social issues that affect our communities and the important role of the nonprofit sector. As the former coordinator and communications manager of PhilLab, Canada's largest philanthropic grant-making research lab, Katherine has been at the forefront of grant-making research, particularly in the realms of social and environmental justice since 2017. Through her role, she has fostered invaluable relationships with grant-making foundations, nonprofits, and philanthropy researchers worldwide. Her work has covered diverse aspects of philanthropy, including the arts, invisible causes, marginalized communities, environment and climate change, social inequalities, and Indigenous relations. Welcome, Katherine.
Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited for your time today and to talk about this important topic that seemed to be the, I guess you could say, in this space, the nonprofit space, it's the hot topic of 2020-25. But before we get into the questions, I always like to get to know my guests a little bit and how they think and their heart. And so what currently excites you about the nonprofit or philanthropic space?
That's a big question to start. I've honestly spent my entire life working with nonprofits in many different ways, either as a volunteer, as a frontline worker, as a funder, as a researcher. So I've really touched on different aspects of the field. And to be honest, the thing that I found the most motivating was the fact that everyone in the space is trying to do something to improve this world. And I've talked to other people who don't seem to have that same motivation in the corporate space, for example, where everyone's just trying to make money, and that motivation, that inspiration, that passion isn't always there. And for me, even if it's challenging, we can dive into how challenging it is these days. But I found that working with people in the nonprofit space has always been very motivating because they're trying to do something. We're all trying to do something to make this world better. And that takes many different forms, but that's definitely why I still am here 20 years later.
Understandable. And we need a lot of, could I say, if we could stamp these times, I guess it would be the call for change is what I would call, what I would name it. And so, as you, I'm sure, are well aware and probably experienced it on a personal level, with the new administration that came into the government, President Trump, came, I'll just say, a tidal wave of changes.
Yeah.
I'll just call it a tidal wave because, I guess we could see it in the distance and then start. And now we are feeling the crash of that tidal wave.
Agreed.
And so I guess let's just start at the beginning, I guess. So between the start of this year till early summer, June, a lot of nonprofits were experiencing disruption and, getting notices that their federal funding was gone. People who were working in the non-profit space lost their jobs because there was no money to pay them. Some programs are no longer around because they got actually notices to stop doing their work. And so I'm sure from a personal level, you felt the effects of this. I guess let's talk about any experiences that you had during this time from your own work.
Well, of course, I think a lot of nonprofits have been affected, and I noticed it most when I do my conferences or my webinars or when I have conversations with nonprofit leaders where they're all in this state of heightened stress and pressure, and they don't know what to do. I think that this is more so now than I've ever seen it in my entire career, because people have been used to getting certain types of funding, and even the cease and desist, asking people to just close their doors, that's a huge question to ask of a lot of these nonprofit leaders. Now, I will say one thing though: this is not something that has no historical background. This is not the first time that this happens. And as a Canadian, I've seen this happen with organizations in Canada where there's a change of government, there's different funding envelopes, and funding from the government shuts down. And this is where, I hate saying it, but I've always been a fan of diversification of income, because then you don't have to depend on one funder for your program to exist. And I think this is a lesson here for anyone listening. No matter how aligned the current government is with your programs or with your services, always try to seek out diversification. Always make sure you have a diverse revenue stream so that you're not stuck in these situations. There was an example where this program in Canada, which would bring students from different provinces and would ship them across the country to have a cultural exchange program. And they were 100% funded by the government, even if they have tons of opportunities of using their past participants to become future donors and stewarding those relationships. And then from one year to the next, they had to replace the millions of dollars in funding. And you can't do that overnight. So as much as I hate it, it's happening. And so my call to arms, if I could say, or my call to action is start diversifying your revenue now. Even if your program has not seen budget cuts, even if your program or your organization has not been affected, you should still take this as a warning to start working on different revenue streams so that you're not faced with the same situation. So that's kind of been what I've been seeing. And of course, as a consultant, this has been, in a way, beneficial in the sense that more nonprofits are seeking out help. But the downside is that many of them don't have the funds to hire someone to actually implement the programs that they need. in a
Yes.
nutshell.
Yes, and so your call to diversify revenue streams, I guess, in doing that, because some nonprofits might not be used to that or have very little experience doing that. What are some common like mistakes or pitfalls that you see that organizations make when they start to jump into diversification?
Yeah, for sure. Well, number one, a lot of nonprofits assume that they can just make a Facebook post and that people will, you know, be clamoring to donate to your organization. Like, that's generally not how it works. Unless you have a huge following, a very engaged audience, and that you have a very strong reputation, that people know what you do and have seen the impact of your work. Think UNICEF, think the Red Cross, think these big organizations that have that reputation. They can make a publication on social media and it will get traction. However, most organizations, if they haven't been in that diversification, if they haven't gone into individual giving, you can't start off like that and expect it to snap your fingers and suddenly you have a whole bunch of people donating. It takes time and you need to build up relationships with your audience. So I think a lot of people need to think about who their audience is, who are their closest fans, their biggest fans, if I could say, that are around them already, and start there. Start with the people closest to you and then build further and further away. A lot of nonprofits tend to neglect building up their communities. They focus so much on the services, which I totally understand. However, building up an emailing list, building up your social media following, and curating and engaging that audience through time is what's going to allow you to have a strong donor base. And also, if you're thinking about engaging corporate funders or sponsors, that audience is going to be your ticket to attracting sponsors that are going to say, hey, you have a huge audience that fits our niche and our target audience. We will gladly sponsor your program because we're getting visibility in front of all those people. So they work hand in hand. You can't just expect to do one revenue stream and not the other. They really all work together. So that would be like my initial advice. If you're starting from scratch, you need to start by building up your communities before you can start doing massive fundraising campaigns.
Yes, and then, another issue that I would, I'm just making the assumption, but I don't think I'm too far, removed from reality in this, is that, when this started happening to nonprofits, a lot of nonprofits that either, had limited budgets or, I think there's already like a, message when people hear nonprofits, they already think like hardly any money, already hardly any money, right? And
Yep.
so this probably only added to like a scarcity mindset. And so, one of the things that I know that you're known about is about challenging that scarcity mindset. And so right now, I think they would probably need that advice straight from you. I guess how do they change that thinking? How do you go from scarcity, abundance thinking in such a situation, essentially when the rug was pulled from under you?
Yes, I think everyone in the nonprofit space has this idea around what nonprofit means. And that means we can't make money. And that's not exactly the definition of nonprofit. So just to clarify for everyone listening, as a nonprofit, you can definitely raise as much funds as you need. The question is about how those funds are used. So the nonprofit component is around, you can't be giving it to shareholders, right? It has to be reinvested into your nonprofit. So just the public sometimes has these preconceptions around that of like, oh, they have so much money. How is that possible? Well, yeah, we run a whole bunch of programs. And if you look at the nonprofit world, there are nonprofits in most sectors that are making enormous waves, that are raising tons of money. If they can do it, so can many nonprofits. But like I said earlier, you can't just expect it to start from scratch and suddenly get thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars coming in. It's a process. And I would say you have to believe that people will want to fund your cause. If you feel uncomfortable asking someone to donate to your organization because, oh, why would they donate? No, then people are not going to donate. because you don't even believe it yourself. And I know this might sound a bit woo-woo, but it's so true. The confidence that you have in saying, hey, I know that you believe in this cause and you want to see this impact in our community. Well, hey, we're inviting you to participate and to invest in this vision of society that you want to see. So sometimes it's about just changing the wording, the perspective you have on what fundraising is, and stop thinking of it as begging people for money. You're asking them and giving them the opportunity to actually make the change that they want to see in the world happen. So I think that's just like a mindset shift that needs to happen. And I hate using these words because it's been so overused for these, life coaches and stuff. It's often seen as blanket statements, but it is really true that nonprofits need to start believing in themselves more and framing it from a confident mindset. Because unfortunately, that's not what I've been seeing from people when they're doing their fundraising. It's very much like, please, we're in an emergency situation. It's so hard. Like every dollar helps. That kind of mindset is just not attractive. So I think people need to really switch how they talk about their funding and how they talk about their impact to inspire people to join instead of like begging and making people feel bad. Because that only has a limited lifespan. You can do that for a while, but after, a couple times, people kind of get tired and they leave that because it's not inspiring.
Yes, and from, I guess, a practical standpoint, like right now, it's probably, I don't own a nonprofit, but if I did, and, I was facing such a situation of what happened in the first 6 months of this year, I would think that it's time for an internal revolution within my nonprofit organization. And what I mean by that is that you have to, I guess, for lack of a better term, dig deep and dig in into what your what your true heart of your organization is and what are you really trying to do to, I guess, move the needle on whatever, problem, scenario, situation, disease, or whatever that your nonprofit is about. And in today's climate of how people are, let's see, I guess you would say, it's not even disengagement. There's a disbelief and it's
Collective overwhelm.
Yes, just everything. People are just like,
Yeah,
right?
it's definitely a lot.
Yes, right. That at this point, facing all of these things, that you now need to probably go and reinvent yourself. And so I guess from and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but you probably have to start even looking from even a whole digital aspect, right? Because everything now is technical. And that's what I've seen, I guess, in the field with a lot of nonprofits. They're lagging behind in the technology sector. So I guess how do they, I guess, since the title of our session is Save Themselves?
Yeah. So my recommendation for people is always not to necessarily change or reinvent, but just to look in. And sometimes it's about cutting out what's not necessary, focusing in on what's really important. What are the programs that have the most impact? What strategies have worked the most? If you have certain social media platforms that are just not getting it, cut them out for now. Let's focus on where your audience is. Like, cutting down on multiplying your approaches, but having strong strategies for the ones that are already working. So if you have a strong Facebook, participation, for example, you should focus on Facebook. If you are starting your Instagram, you have a couple people, but not really no one's engaging, then drop that for now and just focus on the campaigns that are working for you, on the audiences, where your audience is. Sorry. From the digital aspect, and I totally understand where nonprofits are coming from, because investing in technology costs money. You need to train your staff. You need to buy the platforms. You need to, pay these monthly fees to access a lot of these tools. And no one is excited about funding a social media platform or a CRM. Like when you ask your donors, hey, we need a new CRM. It's going to cost us $3,000. Like no one's going to be putting in their dollars for that. It's not sexy. And unfortunately, from a funder perspective, there isn't a whole lot of funders that are also open to investing in capacity building. Everyone wants to fund the programs. No one wants to fund the structure and framework that allows those programs to be successful. Of course, I say no one, but there are people. It's just there's very few. So what I find is really important, that's why I'm a big fan of monthly giving. Monthly giving and individual donors are often not like earmarked for a certain cause or for a certain program. You can use those funds for whatever makes sense. You have more flexibility. So building up that strong base of individual donors, especially monthly because they give more and for longer, gives you the capacity to be able to invest in these technological tools. And also, you don't need the fanciest, most shiny tool to start off with. If you don't mind, I'll give you a little case study example of this small nonprofit in Albania that I work with. They're an animal shelter that didn't have a donation platform. They were using PayPal and direct bank deposits and email transfers. They didn't have an email network. They were not sending out emails to anybody. And they were like, you know what? This is not working. We really need to invest. So I started working with them pretty much at the exact same time as we are now last year. I set them up on DonorBox, which has a free option to do fundraising. So it didn't cost them anything to get their fundraising platform. We ended up getting the CRM, but it wasn't necessary. So that's one thing. So that allowed for more people to be able to donate easily. Because if you look at their website before, it was a famous like PNG image where it says like donate to PayPal with this name and here's our number of our bank account. Like it adds too many steps for people to donate. So that simplified the process enormously. Second, we had a list of all the donors that had given through PayPal, but it was on PayPal and it didn't allow us to communicate with them directly. So we exported all of that. It was a bit of a time-consuming process in the beginning, because unfortunately PayPal doesn't allow for an easy export. And then we uploaded those onto an email management platform. Now, a lot of people are going to be thinking MailChimp or all of these other big ones, but those tend to be very expensive and they will charge you per new subscriber, which is annoying, especially for organizations that are looking to grow. So what I used is this platform that I use called SendFox, which is a very basic email management tool, but it's $50 USD for lifetime use of it. Like you won't pay monthly for up to 1,500, or if I'm not mistaken, now I think it's like 5,000 emails.
Wow.
Like 5,000 emails is a lot. Like to be able to have 5,000 subscribers, it'll take you some time. Don't worry. Like you'll get there hopefully eventually, but like, dude, I've been building up my list for 2 years and I've been doing a lot of stuff and I'm at 1,500 active subscribers. Like it takes time. Of course, nonprofits can grow that faster, but still, that's fine. $50 for that is wonderful. So with the $50 investment, we had their fundraising platform, we had their email. And in our first end of year campaign, so as you said, we launched it in November and then we did it more specifically in December. We launched a 12 Days of Christmas campaign for the puppies and we raised close to $4,000, which covered much more than the initial investment they made in their platform, of course. And we got, I think it was something like 15 new monthly donors covering about $250, $300 a month. So just by investing in a little bit of technology and setting it up, of course, that doesn't include my fees, but they more than covered the cost of investing in technology. And now that those monthly donors are still giving. And what we noticed throughout this year by continuing to build up this audience, we've now reached $3,000 a month. Wow. In monthly giving already. We're at, I think we actually just topped 3,300, which for a small shelter in Albania whose monthly revenue and monthly costs are $8,000, we're almost covering 50% of their costs with monthly donations in under a year. So I get it. It's scary to start something new. And I'm not saying it was easy. I think we've sent 100 emails in this year. But we segmented it. We didn't send the same emails to everyone, but we've been slowly building up our database of donors and building relationships and sending stories of impact. None of the, oh no, this dog is going to die if you don't donate. It was, we're going to save this dog. We're doing everything we can to do it. If you'd like to support her recovery, donate here. Here's what she's looking like now. We've helped her already. those stories of inspirational impact is what has been motivating people to stay. So long story short, oftentimes finding the right tools is more important than finding the brightest, shiniest tools. And there are always alternatives that are not perfect, but to start, it's fine. And then as you grow up your capacity, as you have more monthly regular income coming in, then you can start looking into, okay, what other tools do I need next to build this even further?
That's a great way to look at it, that it's incremental and that, you don't just run in there and take all the shiniest new objects, that it's okay to start small and know that it will take time, but you'll get there. And the other thing that I like that you brought up, and I think it's something that is key for these times, is that the way that you did the campaign, how you didn't do, I think everybody's familiar if they, they've been doing it for, I don't know, many, many years, at least the last 40 years, where they do the, I'm taking a note from your animal shelter example. They always show the sad, poor doggy that hasn't eaten or that, has an injury. But I like that you turned it around, that yes, this dog might be injured, but look what we've already done. And so, just give us, $5 more and he'll be on his way running with the other puppies. Of course, I just made that part up, but that is a different approach, because I think it also goes with the times, right? Like, as we said before, people are overwhelmed, right?
Yeah. People are already dealing with a lot of stuff right now. The last thing we want to do is make them even more sad and hating the world.
Yes. And so taking a different approach and I guess a different perspective, I guess looking at it's not, I don't want to say it's just positive thinking. There is an element to that, but it's about like, how can we fix it? Or where are we in the change journey? And so
exactly, the solutions.
Yes, the solutions. And so that will motivate people much better to be like, okay, they're like 75% of the way there. That's great. That's not too bad. Only 25% needed to go and finish it. I can do that. Right. Versus like you show them like, the puppy farm has been blown to bits and, and,
One's dying and we have no more food and the electricity isn't working and there's a flood and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yes, and it makes everybody want to just go back to bed and hide under the cover and say, I can't do it either.
Exactly.
So that is an excellent key right there, is to show where along the solution line that you stand, in order to motivate people to want to give more, because they can see that they can contribute to the end of this problem. So, go ahead.
So that doesn't mean that you can't have emergencies. So I'll give an example for the same animal shelter. We got this really horrible case where this dog was beaten really intensely with some form of blunt object, and they thought she was dead, and a volunteer found her and rushed her to the vet, and she was in really dire conditions. And they don't have necessarily the constant cash flow to be able to just cover medical expenses. So there was an emergency. So of course we shared her story, but we shared how we're going to solve the problem from more than just this dog. We said these kinds of situations have to stop. Not only are we going to try to save this dog and do everything, but we will also start the legal procedures to make a complaint against the person who did this, who find out who it was, and to bring them to justice. So that was also just like bringing it to the next step of making it like, yes, we can save this dog, but unless we change the situation and we change the context, this is going to happen again. And there's only so many that we can actually do. So I really like that approach. And of course, someone stood up, this is a beautiful story, and said, you know what, I will cover all of her vet bills at the new hospital that she has to be transferred to, and I will adopt her afterward. So we shared this story with all of the donors that had donated, like, thank you so much. You allowed us to do the emergency, and now someone's going to adopt her. Thank you so much. Do you know how many new monthly donors I got from that? Like how many people were like, we are so proud of the work you're doing and we want to make sure that these stories continue to happen. So it's not about not sharing emergency situations, but make it inspiring of like, we can do this. This dog deserves justice. Let's do this together. Not poor us. Oh no, it's so sad. Like it's sometimes it's about how we are asking, how we are sharing these appeals that is really important, more so than it was an emergency. And you can say that, but it's about how you frame it. So that's been something that I find really, really helpful for people to rethink about how they're doing fundraising, how they're approaching the thing. But what you said about the goals is also something I wanted to mention. Having a fundraiser that starts at zero is really not motivating. So what I suggest to people is you usually have like that inner circle of like your closest donors or people that you would feel comfortable reaching out to, kind of like in the behind the curtain type of thing, behind the scenes. So you reach out to them individually and say, hey, we have this new campaign and we need to, I don't know, we need to start this new program, or we have this new cohort that needs extra funding. We're reaching out to you first because we know that you're our biggest fans and we want to get initial buy-in to inspire other people. Would you be willing to make a donation of $100 today to get us started? And get to that first 25, 30% of your goal so that when you're sharing it publicly, people are like, oh, wow, they're already at this much. That's wonderful. And they just started today. And that gives trust. That gives your audience trust that, okay, other people are donating. I will follow suit. It's kind of like that tip jar at the coffee shop. If it's empty, people are much less likely to donate than if you put in dollar bills and if you put in money in it. People are going to follow suit because as much as I hate to say it, people follow what other people do. Sometimes it goes for good. Sometimes it goes for bad. But in this case, it's about getting people to see that other people are also supporting your cause. And so they'll not be the first. And I think that's a really important lesson for everyone listening.
Yes. So yeah, get it going. And I think that just, people wanted to see action these days. I guess you would say they want to see things are moving forward. And so I wanted to ask a little bit of a personal question, but then also it ties to your work. So you work a lot with animals and environmental causes and community service. Why did you choose those avenues, or did those avenues choose you? And how has this influenced how you do your work?
For sure. Well, I started off as kind of more of an environmental person, if I could say. I was really interested in the environmental impacts of on our world. To be fully honest, I was a bit of a little witch in the sense of I was like loved going out and finding the right leaves and the right flowers and making little I was doing weird little seances and I thought it was really fun. I loved spending time out in nature. So it started from the environmental component, but obviously like most children, I also loved animals. I love spending time with them. But then when I started going to high school, we had a lot of environment focus in our school. And I started understanding the connection between taking care of the environment and taking care of animals. They're super interconnected. And as we move forward, and as I got more and more understanding, I started learning more about it, like it's actually all interconnected. Health is impacted by our environment, the animals, conservation, but also farm animals and how we treat animals in a lot of industrial projects directly affects our own health, our environmental health, our community health, mental health. Like it's all connected. So that's kind of what I talk about on my own podcast, the Just Because podcast. I talk about how everything is connected and we can't separate the two. But I'm going to share another story about why I dedicate myself more and more to animals and to the environment is that there's a lot less organizations defending them than, if I could say, like human-focused organizations. And in Canada in particular, up until 2018, defending animals or defending the environment or protecting it was not considered a charitable activity. So getting your 501c3 status so that you can give out tax receipts wasn't possible, which made it very difficult for those organizations to fundraise, to get access to grants. So it was very limiting for them. So they really needed all the extra help they wanted. when I started fundraising for an animal rights organization, I was, those annoying people on the streets that go, "Hi, do you have 2 seconds for Greenpeace or Amnesty International or whatever organization it is?" I did that for 5 years. Very tough work. And I was doing it for animals, and I've been spat on, literally spat on by people saying, "How dare you be protecting animals when there are children suffering because of the war or because of this and because of that?" So there's this weird conception that if you defend the environment or if you protect, animals, it's because you don't like humans or you don't care about them. And that is so far from the truth. But unfortunately, in the sector, at least back then when I was really getting more and more involved, there was some truth to that. I would hear, "Oh, I hate humans," almost every day when I was working in an animal shelter. And there was this infighting of you're not vegan enough, or you're not environmental enough, you're not eco-friendly enough. There was so much competition of hating people for what they were doing to what we considered, the natural world. We were the problem. But I also like to think and try to have hope of we're also the solution. We're causing maybe the problems, but we're also very intelligent. We can also find solutions. Look at all the people fighting every day for all of these causes. How many nonprofits exist? That gives me hope that there are great people out there, and we need to have that hope. So the combination of the fact that they were much more difficult to defend, I like a challenge. Second of all, I love animals. My 2 puppies are my babies. I would do anything for my dogs. And the fact that they're all connected, but they get less attention and less support made me be more and more of an advocate for them. So in a nutshell, that's my little story.
Wow. And, you brought to light something I think I've seen, but, never really took a deep look at of kind of this internal hierarchy within the nonprofit realm of how people look at, what causes that you're defending. I think all people would be like, "Oh, after, defending war zones, whoa, number one,
Yeah.
war,
Children.
goodness, oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
And they look at, if you're in the, I guess you'd say, that is the ultimate, and then, move down to maybe at the very bottom, you talk about defending the soil, right? Pun intended,
Worms.
and not
It would be
intended.
worms.
Or
Worms would
worms.
probably be very low down that list. Or ex-convicts or drug addicts.
Yes,
Or
things
people there's a lot of people that are seen as it's their fault. Then that also leads it, so that makes it's a very unsexy cause to defend. It's very hard to defend a lot of those causes.
Yes. And so, in these times where, we have, I would say just globally, yes, the U.S. Is probably the leader in it because we have, what I'll call a show that goes on every day of what, breaking news, what happened now. But globally, we are very polarized. And so for a nonprofit world to be polarized, the people who are supposed to be the helpers, that is, I guess, heartbreaking and problematic at the same
Yes.
time. And so I guess that's another thing that if I were to deduct from what you're saying, that really that nonprofits need to focus on in these times is not being polarizing with their own cause of thinking in a hierarchical, if I could make that word a level, because we are all on the same ball.
Yeah, we really are.
Yes.
And you're never going to invite people to your party if you're an a-hole. You know what I mean? That's what I never understood about. And I get it. I was a crazy vegan activist. Anyone that says, do you like talking with vegans are probably going to say no, because they can be annoying as hell. But it's because they care so much. But it comes from a good place. I understand that. But I understood that by judging people and criticizing people constantly and attacking people, like it did not bring more people to my table. It did not bring more people and want to have conversations with me. And funny enough, they actually did a study. Funalytics, amazing organization that does, they study and they do research on the animal welfare movement, but not from like a which animal is like most abused. It was really just like what tactics and what strategies work best for organizations. And they did a study where they compared the behavioral change of people between different types of strategies. So they would show like more of a neutral, like editorial article, which discussed the pros and cons of industrial agriculture, for example. That was more, it wasn't like an attack. And then they showed videos of people, let's say, going into a Burger King, calling everyone a murderer and like making a scene. And then they actually interviewed these people before and then after being in front of these different types of tactics. And what they noticed was the like attack focused, or I'm not going to say rioting, but like, I don't know how to even describe it, but it was a specific word, but you know what I mean? Like those more like in your face, judging people and like calling people out, disruptive strategies. Not only did it not change anyone's behavior for better, on average, it made people worse. So people that were, let's say, meat eaters would say, I've been eating more meat because that affected me so much, I wanted to go in the opposite direction. So if we're thinking about what's actually best for our cause and not for our ego of wanting to feel like we're better than the other people because we're doing so much better because we're doing X, Y, Z, you're actually pushing people away into the opposite direction. So why do we keep on doing it? We've actually noticed that other forms of education that are maybe less catchy or maybe not going to get as much views on Facebook, but you're actually going to start changing behavior. Isn't that what we want? So it's a reflection to think about, like, are we trying to just get attention? And I get it, in the age of social media, we want likes, we want shares, we want visibility, and we think that all visibility is good, but it's not necessarily. So I'll leave you with that reflection, listeners, of what strategies you use to attract people to your cause can actually be worsening everything and not making it better.
Yes, that's, I would say that is the call. And maybe, well, I don't know, I won't try to jump into our administration's head, but so I'll just throw that out right now. That, especially in these times, right, is like maybe the challenge that's on the table to the nonprofit world is about how to be above the smog. And that's difficult because, you have to look into it, but pulling your organization out of it. And what I mean by the smog, of course, is all the political and not getting torn to the left or to the right, but to be true to the goodness of your cause. And to present it in a respectful manner that realizes there are these, extremes, and then there's still the people in the middle, and present it in a way. So that I would say that's the challenge of the nonprofit world right now, right? Because there's so many issues and there's so many things that people are dealing with, and then there's so many ways that people are thinking politically. So many ways people are, dealing economically, all these things, right? And so you have to, as the nonprofit now, I guess, try to be, as they would say, be kind of the better person in the matter, which is hard.
It's very hard. And that's where ego comes in, right? It's about, okay, governments will come and go, and there's only so much we can do to control that. But we can focus on the values that unite us instead of what differentiates us of like, well, unlike our right people on the right or unlike those on the left, we believe like, instead of creating more division, like as a nonprofit, we have to think about the more people that join our movement, the more people that can find something that they understand and that they believe in and that they value an organization, the stronger we will be and the more like sustainable you'll be in the long term. Because like I said, like political change, like won't happen overnight. You're not going to be able to convince someone to completely change their ideology, but you might get them to understand that, this is not a political organization. If you're a political organization, that's a different story. Sorry. But if you're a charitable organization or you're defending the environment or whatever it is, stop making it political when you're talking to your audience. I think that can greatly help you increase your audience. And that's where it's a problem now is that everyone's getting involved. And I get it. It's because the government is affecting your income streams. It's affecting your funding. But the people are not the ones making those decisions necessarily. And if they don't agree with what you do, then okay, you can't have them all. Everyone has different causes that they care about. And like the man who spat at me and told me, how dare I be protecting animals? Like, okay, I get it. Like what's happening at the time, it was the war in Syria, was horrible. And I understand where he's coming from. And I said, look, you don't know what I do on my weekends. Maybe I'm also defending the children in Syria. You don't know. And so we have to stop judging and assuming that people won't care. And you'll be surprised by who will actually show up when you are open to having conversations that are a bit more challenging, but understanding like, what do you care about people? And before we move on, I'd love to share this story about one of our donors at the SPA, so the animal rights organization I was working at. He had signed our petition and we had this list. So we were doing follow-up calls to, convert people who had signed petitions into donors. And I called this guy, his name was Roger. And we started having conversations like, oh, yeah, my wife forced me to sign that petition. And I was like, oh, well, you have a lovely wife. I'd love to meet her one day. We started joking around and we said, well, you know what? Like, I have a problem with some of these animal rights organizations because, like, I work in the dairy industry and, like, I feel like I don't have a place in there. I feel kind of like a hypocrite of wanting to defend. I was like, listen, everyone has their place to play. We started having a conversation and he's like, but it's not to say I don't disagree with some of the things that are happening in the dairy industry. So we had a really great conversation about the pitfalls of industrial agriculture. And he ended up understanding and agreeing. And I said, I get it. Like, it's not going to disappear overnight, but like, we're just trying to improve it slowly and slowly. And in the end, he's like, you know what? This was great. Like, he made a $50 donation. Like, I'm not saying that changed the world. But then, of course, 6 months later, he made another $50 donation. And then eventually he became a monthly donor. And like, I like to think that allowing him to be who he was, even if that wasn't the animal rights ideal, allowed him to enter the world and feel accepted anyway, and start to maybe think differently about how we're changing the world for animals. So I think that goes to show when you show up with more patience, acceptance, and understanding of others and listen more, I think we can have a lot more impact on our communities than if we show up and just think we know it all. Because we don't.
Yeah, and I like that also. That story shows that you can be doing one thing and think another thing, and you can agree on some elements but not all. Because right now we have the thing that you have to be like, if you agree with A, you can't think of anything in B, right?
Exactly. It's a very extreme, and no one is black or white, right? It's not this like one extreme or the other. Like we have a bit of everything in us, and I think it just makes people crazy. Jeez.
Yes, and I think that is, and that speaks, not only for the nonprofit world, but just everything in general, that we need to understand. We need to, I guess one of the biggest lessons is we've gotten to a point that there's no give and take. That's all just like one or the other. You give it or you take it.
It's just, it's not sustainable, and it's just, it's unrealistic. And we get put into these boxes and that's why I hate about all these labels that we slap on ourselves of I'm this, I'm that. Like, no, you're not. You're such a complexity of things that you can't, even the voting system, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you can't be 100% in agreement with one party or the other. Like, anyways, whatever. That's to get not into politics so much, but the same applies to nonprofits where, you might, let's say from an animal rights perspective, like you might be more on the side of like, we believe that dogs and cats, okay, you're on the domestic animal side. Okay, cool. That's your perspective. You're going to play a great role in that. And you might be on the other side that it's like, I don't even think we should have pets, but I think that we shouldn't exploit any animals. Everyone has a different perspective of how it shows up. And there's not really an absolute right or wrong in general. Like it's about finding how all of them together play into a very interesting perspective of the world.
Yes. And, you bring up a solid point that I think this is the change that nonprofits have to face. Like right now, I would say this is the look in the mirror, and it's the time to examine your nonprofit worldview, and to open up your mind to the possibilities. Like nonprofits, a lot of times they remind me kind of like elementary schools, and why I say that, there's a time for lunch, there's a time for this, and there's like a rigid way of thinking, but that doesn't work in these times because, literally every day you wake up, there's some new thing that's like, oh, this hit.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's changing too fast.
Right.
Our world is changing too fast.
Right.
You can't, even just AI.
Yes.
Like, can anyone now imagine their life without AI?
Right.
And like, what was it a couple of years ago? No one had heard of ChatGPT. No one was using AI. And now it's like people don't even know how to live without it.
Yes.
It's crazy.
And so that is, I think that is what's facing nonprofits, is that you have to shift your mind's frame and also stay true to who you are. It's a very difficult tightrope. And so I'm not denying that because, it's like, I guess the question nonprofits have to ask themselves to move forward successfully is, who are we? And, what is it? What's our place in the world at this time? And how do we still achieve where we want to go, or how we want to see this, change in the world? So very difficult and challenging time. But yes, I would say take it as a time of looking in the mirror. And then I guess to touch on a question for yourself, but also for nonprofits, because of all of the turmoil and chaos that has unfolded this year, how are you suggesting to nonprofits to avoid a burnout, or just like being like, I give up?
Well, first of all, rest if you can, but I get that's a very easy statement for many people. They're like, yeah, okay, good luck with that. I work full time and do my nonprofit on the side. Well, I think collaborations and partnering with people is a great way to lessen the burden. And I think a lot of nonprofits started that shouldn't have, in the sense of there's so many nonprofits that already exist. I think a lot of times we didn't need another nonprofit. You could have instead started working with a nonprofit, or maybe done some other initiative without having the whole headache of managing a nonprofit. There's, especially like just thinking from an animal perspective, do you know how many animal rescues there are? It is insane. I think supporting each other and collaborating and working with other nonprofits can really help share resources, support each other, and feel less alone. I also have a great toolkit that I have that is all of my favorite tools that can really help. Like just something like Calendly has saved me so much time. And I'm sure you agree with, like, from booking podcast episodes, like having the ability to just be like, okay, sure, let's meet, book a time on my calendar, instead of spending those who knows how long or sending each other emails, then remembering to send the link and put it in your calendar. Like, find tools that will help you remove the annoying repetitive tasks from your docket so that you can focus on the important work. And I get it in the beginning, start with one big problem at a time. Don't try to do them all. So if you want to help automate something, try to find a tool that will help you automate it. There's a lot of free ones out there. There's a lot of tools that can help you to remove those boring tasks. Don't try to remove the important ones or the ones that drive you and that you love. Remove the ones that are boring and annoying. And like I said earlier, only focus on the the strategies that are working for you right now and try to minimize the ones that are not. So instead of doing a mailing campaign and an email campaign and a social media campaign, like which one had the highest return on investment? Okay, well then let's focus on that. If your events are not bringing in much more money than the time and effort that you're putting in, stop doing events. Like there's things that you can do to cut that is not efficient and focus on what is, and you'll see a higher return on investment for your same amount of energy, which will obviously allow you to have that space and time to regroup, to breathe, and to take the rest we need, because we all need it. We all try to do everything. It's not sustainable. We know it. We just don't know how to get out of it.
Yes. And in conclusion, I guess, what is another, self-help as nonprofits prepare not only to finish this season, but to step into another unpredictable year, as all years are unpredictable, 2026. That's so wild to say that, 2026.
I know.
What's, one book or, obviously your podcast, the Just Because podcast, but what's one book or resource that you feel that has influenced you greatly lately, or that you would highly recommend to nonprofits as they start a new year?
Oof. There's so many. My one recommendation, it's going to be a very vague one, but if you're not on LinkedIn yet, get on LinkedIn. As a professional, you can really expand your network and get help. I have never had a community as generous with sharing resources, tools, examples, and showing up for coffee chats. Just shoot the shit. Let's be honest here. Sometimes you just need to talk with someone else. I find that's been really great. And another resource that I recommend is called the Nonprofit Hive. I can send you the link, Annmarie, if you want, and you can share it with them. It's a free platform that allows you to connect one-on-one with other nonprofit leaders from around the world. You choose like what kind of conversations you want to have, what sector you're in, and Tasha, the founder, does an amazing job at connecting you with great people. I have met clients. I have met organizations that I now donate to and support. I've met colleagues that I now work with. I've met so many amazing people. And it's really made me feel less alone and allowed me to feel like I have other people that have my back. So those would be my two. LinkedIn, if you're more into social media, or if you want more of like a one-on-one face-to-face interaction, I would say the Nonprofit Hive is a great place to start to build up your network and start building a community around your work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Katherine, for your time and insight. To learn more about Katherine Lacefield, go to justbecause.consulting. If you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice problem, or want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.work to start your project of change today. Subscribe to our mailing list at projectgood.work/subscribe to get our episodes and blog articles sent to you each month. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Project Good. We're focused on what matters.